Bunker de sécurité numéro 8, 12 décembre 2021. Mon nom est Edgar Clément. Il y a 6 mois, un virus d'origine totalement inconnue a complètement décimé le continent européen. À ma connaissance, je suis le seul survivant. Foutu générateur. Tout a été très vite. D'abord la France contaminée en 5 jours, et puis après il y a eu l'Allemagne, l'Espagne, l'Italie, partout. Et dire que tout a commencé ici, dans cet immeuble, à Massy. À cause de ça. Cette clé USB, elle appartenait à Bernard, de la direction contrôle de gestion. Un chic type Bernard. Gros bosseur.
Il avait travaillé sur un document confidentiel, mais de chez lui, en utilisant l'ordinateur de son fils. Dans un bureau, il avait trouvé une clé USB, vacances en Bretagne. Là-dessus, il n'y avait que quelques photos, il y avait de la place. Alors il a copié son fichier PowerPoint. Une présentation ficelée au millimètre. Ce matin-là, en arrivant au bureau, il était serein. Il a allumé son ordinateur, il a branché la clé USB, puis il est parti se faire un café. Et c'est là, oui là, au moment où le café coulait dans son mug Carrefour Massy, que le virus, tapi dans la clé USB depuis plus de 2 mois, s'est infiltré dans nos serveurs. Lentement. Malgré la bataille héroïque de la direction informatique, nos ordinateurs ont commencé à s'éteindre vers 17h15. Puis après, c'est le bâtiment, il n'y a plus d'électricité. 12 heures après, toute la ville était plongée dans le noir. Et puis après, il y a eu la région. Jusqu'au laboratoire de virologie de haute sécurité de l'Institut Pasteur. La suite, vous la connaissez. Moi, je me suis réfugié dans ce bunker. Et depuis, j'attends.
Edgar, tu fais quoi là?
Oui, j'arrive.
Ça fait une plombe que t'es enfermé dans les toilettes. On t'attend pour déjeuner, nous.
N'empêche, ça pourrait arriver.
Cybermalveillance.gouv.fr lance début 2020 son nouveau site internet. Découvrez une version plus ergonomique et plus graphique et surtout plus efficace pour la mise en relation des victimes de cybermalveillance et des prestataires de services inscrits sur le site. Sur la nouvelle page d'accueil, les 2 principales missions de cybermalveillance.gouv.fr, la sensibilisation du public et des entreprises aux risques encourus sur Internet et l'assistance aux victimes seront mieux identifiées. Pour se prémunir efficacement contre les futures attaques, des contenus adaptés à tous les publics et aux professionnels seront proposés et actualisés régulièrement sur la page d'accueil, avec un système d'alerte en cas de risque majeur. Pour les victimes, un nouveau parcours plus simple et plus intuitif permettra d'optimiser la mise en relation avec les prestataires référencés. Il sera désormais possible d'évaluer l'efficacité et la réactivité de la prise en charge, ce qui permettra d'améliorer la satisfaction des victimes et de valoriser la qualité du service rendu par les prestataires. Des espaces dédiés aux victimes et aux prestataires faciliteront aussi cette mise en relation, avec un suivi pas à pas de la prise en charge jusqu'à la résolution du problème. Zoom sur le nouvel espace dédié aux prestataires, un suivi détaillé et en temps réel des demandes d'intervention, mais aussi un nouvel espace documentaire avec du contenu dédié, tutoriels, formation aux menaces. Assistance et conseils pour votre sécurité numérique sur www.cybermalveillance.gouv.fr.
Bonjour à tous, bonjour à toutes et bienvenue pour cette 2e journée du FIC 2020. Pour ceux qui n'étaient pas là hier, je vais me répéter et me représenter. Je m'appelle Julia Siguer et je travaille pour une chaîne d'information internationale qui s'appelle France 24 et qui est diffusée en 4 langues, français, anglais, espagnol et arabe. Et je présente une émission sur le canal anglophone autour des nouvelles technologies qui s'appelle Tech 24, que je vous invite bien sûr à nous suivre sur tous nos réseaux sociaux. Hello and welcome to all of you. My name is Julia Seeger and I'm the presenter of a tech show called Tech 24 and it's broadcast on the French international TV station France 24. Alors, on espère que vous avez apprécié les débats, les tables rondes, les interventions d'hier, c'était assez riche. Aujourd'hui, un programme tout aussi riche avec notamment l'intervention du ministre de l'Intérieur Christophe Castaner vers 10h40. on l'espère. Et puis, tout à l'heure, dans l'après-midi, une table ronde autour des sujets de souveraineté numérique. C'est vrai que c'est un thème central. On posera aussi les questions qui fâchent. Est-ce qu'il faut rétablir une certaine souveraineté numérique? Comment se protéger? Est-ce qu'on est sous tutelle américaine au niveau de nos données? Donc voilà, surtout, n'hésitez pas. J'en profite pour vous rappeler, n'hésitez surtout pas à nous envoyer vos questions au travers de Twitter. On était un petit peu déçus hier parce qu'on n'a pas eu beaucoup de questions et donc on n'a pas pu les prendre durant les tables rondes. Alors surtout, envoyez-les au moment des tables rondes puisque c'est le moment où on va regarder pour pouvoir les prendre. Encore une fois, vous avez accès directement au travers de Twitter à des gens absolument exceptionnels. Alors n'hésitez surtout pas. I'd like to take a moment to really encourage you to send in your comments, your questions, because you have access to absolutely wonderful people with incredible knowledge. So please send in your questions. Use the hashtag either AskFIC or FIC2020. We'll be watching both of them. So the upcoming roundtable, I'm actually very excited about it because it talks about social engineering. And for people who don't know what social engineering is, it's the art of exploiting human flaws to achieve a malicious objective. And what's really interesting is that cyber criminals actually induce their victims to hand over their confidential information to then be able to have more targeted attacks. So here's a focus on the main techniques that are used in so-called social engineering.
What I did in my youth is hundreds of times easier today. Technology breeds crime. Even with the best security measures, every company has a weak link, the human factor. Some of the most effective cyber attacks use psychological manipulation to gain access to systems, networks, data, or money. This art of deception is called social engineering. One breach out of 3 comes from social engineering. Either massive or targeted, the attacks can take many shapes. Phishing, vishing, pretexting. I'm the new IT manager. I need your credentials and passwords. And it works. As more than 1 in 10 employees fall for social engineering, 85% of organizations worldwide now experience these ever-growing scams. Social engineering attacks across the world cost businesses $1.4 million in 2018, an increase by 8% over 1 year. Criminals now make social engineering and technical attacks to bypass multi-factor authentication. If human is the weakest link, it could be the strongest. Be aware of the value of your data. Some others are.
Once again, the theme of this FIC 2020, the human at the heart of the machine. So don't worry, we're actually going to be giving you tips so that you won't fall for social engineering. Without further ado, please welcome on stage Tom Von Gessel, the Chief Information Security Officer of SkyTeam, Jeff Moss, the founder of DEF CON, Rachel Toback, the CEO and co-founder of Social Proof Security, Raif Muis, the author of How to Hack a Human, and Dina Caputo, the Chief Behavioral Scientist of Cybersecurity in Mirtz Data. Hello. Oops. We're not. Hello. Welcome. Hello. Dina Caputo, I was saying, is the Chief Behavioral Scientist for Cybersecurity in Mirtz Data and Human Solution Divisions. Welcome to all of you. I'm actually going to sit here. It's a pleasure to have you on this panel. I'm very, very excited because prepping for this panel, I just discovered so many things, and I think all of you are going to discover as well. Raif, I'm going to start with you. So you're the author of, I just said it, the book, How to Hack a Human. How easy is it to hack a human?
Well, that's a very interesting question. It's a topic, in fact, that I spent the whole of 2018 researching. And because I'm a cybersecurity expert, really, what I decided to do was look at all the techniques for human control and influence, especially the ones that were maybe not very ethical, and to apply cybersecurity techniques such as the kill chain and see if they worked against it. But I think to answer that question and perhaps to show how easy it is, I first want to ask the audience a question just with a show of hands. How many of you would you say, do you think, were hacked yesterday, like that you were successfully in some way manipulated or hacked? So show of hands if you think you were.
Donc levez la main si vous pensez que vous avez été hacké hier. No
Not many hands. Okay, which is interesting. And I think by the end of this session, you'd see a lot more hands going up. Because let's define what we mean by human hacking, because it goes a little bit broader than just social engineering. So in human hacking terms, what we mean is somebody using something that is unfair or unethical in order to obtain information from you or to create an action, you know, to perhaps control or influence you to get a different outcome. And those, as you mentioned, they take advantage. Some people don't like the word human flaws. I heard another panelist mention that before. Maybe they'll talk to that. My old software design team used to say, if you know what it is, it's not a flaw, it's a feature. But basically, they're design vulnerabilities, let's say, or they're vulnerabilities that we have that can be taken advantage of. And there are an awful lot of them, because if you actually look at human psychology and the way in which the brain operates, we all like certain things. We like simplicity. We like things to be easy. We can make bad decisions if we're made emotional about something. So there are various triggers, and in fact, there aren't just a few triggers, there are hundreds of them. And I don't know, just perhaps a couple of demonstrations quickly. I think we've got a slide, have we? Just see if it comes up on the screen. But this just demonstrates, there you go, this demonstrates a kind of optical illusion. You've probably seen this, but is this moving or is it still as an image? And what you find is as your eyes move across it, it seems to move. And the reason it does that isn't because the image is moving, it's the way your eye is processing the data. It makes it look like it's moving. And that's
it's an optical illusion, right?
Yeah, it's just an optical illusion. But it kind of shows you a little bit that the way in which we perceive things and the way in which things are can be manipulated and changed. And although social engineering is one form of human hacking, actually we see a lot of this just happening in terms of unfair or unethical behavior in mainstream as well. So I don't know if we've got the second one, just to give another example of this in mainstream use, to the next slide. But basically, if you go to something like a hotel room booking site, what you'll find is maybe it's got an image like this. You go and you think, right, okay, how are we actually, am I going to book this particular room? It's 129 euros. You might look at it briefly and move on. But if we introduce some of psychology to that, and we change to the next slide, it's the same picture, it's the same details, but by introducing a bit of psychology, what we do is try and introduce a bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now there's only one room available at this price. It's a reduced price, and 2 people booked it in the past hour. And by introducing these kind of manipulations, now you might think, well, this is actually useful information. I know I need to book it, but is the information real? And what I started to find was when I set out on this journey, I thought I was just going to be looking at social engineering, analyzing all the various social engineering techniques. But I got to a part of what we all know as cybersecurity or security professionals as dwell time. So successful hacking is all about, remaining unnoticed for as long as you possibly can. And in human hacking, I started to find that this was also a thing, that actually you can really only successfully hack or manipulate someone if they don't know it's happening. And so actually, if you look at shopping pages, how your personal details are tracked, your cookie permission box, where there's attentional bias to try and encourage you to accept all, and another technique we might talk about later to try and discourage you from the other options. These are actually all using the various design vulnerabilities that we have as human beings.
Very well. Rachel, what are the latest developments, would you say, in terms of social engineering? We kind of saw it touched up a little bit in the report. We saw phishing, vishing, spear phishing. I mean, walk us through all these techniques.
Yes, we have spear phishing, which are super targeted attacks. We're seeing this in higher numbers now, which is really interesting because this is what I do every single day. I'm hired by companies to actually go out and attack them. And so what I do is I use social media to understand what people like. When I understand what they like, I know how to build a good reinforcement structure for them so that they don't even feel like something suspicious is happening. A lot of times we hear things like, if it's suspicious, report it to the IT department. But in many cases, when I'm doing my attacks, it doesn't look suspicious at all. I know that you go out for donuts every Tuesday with your best friend Rick. And because I know that, I'm going to send you a coupon for your favorite donut place. You have tagged them via geolocation on your Instagram, so I know where you currently frequent. When I know that information, I can give you a hyper-targeted attack, one that you would not be likely to report to the IT department. And when we can use that and introduce some sort of urgency, we know this because of Robert Cialdini's principles of persuasion, if anybody's read his book Influence. We know we can create a sense of urgency, which makes you think, man, I really need to click on this deal, or I really need to get this coupon right now because it's going away in 24 hours, and I always go out on Tuesdays with Rick, and this expires. Wow, how perfect. It expires tonight. It's Tuesday. And so that's how we build our attacks. They're hyper-targeted. I also do this over the phone. We call that phishing, voice solicitation. And so it can happen over the phone, it can happen over text, it can happen over WhatsApp or email. And these types of social engineering attacks, they're not new. Frank Abagnale Jr., if you've ever seen Catch Me If You Can, you're familiar with these attacks. But back in the day, Frank Abagnale Jr. had to don like a pilot's outfit to learn how to cash a fraudulent check as a pilot. Nowadays, I can just learn that on Instagram.
Right, and what's interesting, it's not just online, it's still a human interaction, and it still happens in a very humanly way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jeff Moss, it's a pleasure to have you also on the panel. The question I have is, when I talk about all these things to people, they often tell me, well, who cares? You know, I have nothing to hide, and I don't really understand. Even if hackers do get control of my email, what could they do with my email, you know? And I get this reaction all the time, and I'm actually really passionate about those topics, but I don't know what to tell them. What would you respond to those people?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times people think they're not important, or what do I have? And sometimes it's not about you. It has very little to do about you. It might be about your best friend. It might be about your boss. It might be about your wife, right? So when you're being attacked, you don't know why the attacker is coming after you. Now, you might think it could be fraud, and they're just trying to get passwords to your banking account. It could be simple monetization. But let's say you're best friends with somebody who's popular in the media. Maybe it's a reporter trying to dig up dirt to write an article or get something for their new book, or if you're a friend of a politician or someone who might be a politician, right? Maybe somebody's doing opposition research. You just don't know the reasons why someone might be coming after you. And with all this attention around information operations, a lot of what happens is when a nation state maybe is coming after you, or an organized crime group, they don't go directly at you. What they do is they go after all of your friends, and they go after your wife and the wife's friends, and they try to surround you and gather all the information about everything around you before they come at you. So that's why when people say, well, what's the big deal? It's like, well, it might not be about you. It might be about you accidentally hurting your best friend. And so that's why when you hear about possible defenses against this, it's just good hygiene to build defenses, even if you don't think you personally have anything to lose. It may not be about you. And I think later on we'll talk about how sometimes the target isn't even a human. The target of the attack might be a fictitious human, or as we call them in America, a company. Right? They might be trying to take over the company's legal identity by impersonating the CEO or the other board members. And so in that situation, right, they're not even going after a human, they're going after a legal entity. And so, like I just say, you can't know.
So what's also interesting in what you're saying is that the hackers who are going for our information aren't just black hat hackers. Journalists, you said it, perhaps, trying to dig dirt about someone to have a good article. Who else? I mean, it could be corporate.
The ones that are really good in the UK are the paparazzi digging up dirt on the royals.
Right.
Right? I mean, if you were even remotely associated with a royal, oh my gosh, they would be all over you. Remember the phone hacking scam where they'd actually break into phones and listen to voicemail to gain information to help pretend that they knew more, that then they could use that information to elicit more information, and next thing you know, they have everything they need. And so I think it's in this age, I think Rachel mentioned that access to information is almost not a barrier. Enough people leak enough information. And with hard drives and data storage so cheap, the information lasts forever. Right. I mean, you could fully pull up somebody's records from when they're in high school and pretend you're a long-lost teacher.
Right.
And so the types of attacks are different now than they were 10, 15 years ago. And because of this, I think we'll have these sort of it's like a persistent vulnerability where before you just couldn't get your hands on the information, or the costs were so high to do what Rachel just explained. You would have to be a royal. They would have to follow you around with the car and figure out where you got coffee and donuts. Not anymore. And if you think about all these scandals about personal location data and ad trackers, now if I spend a couple $100 and get an account and buy data for ad tracking and decide I want to target all the people in downtown Manhattan, I can learn where everybody goes by buying their location data.
Where can you buy those locations?
So there's companies that sell this to ad tech, financial tech companies, consumer behavior, psychographic companies that want to try to analyze consumer behavior. If you pay the money, you get the feed. You might not use it to market a product. You might use it to commit crimes. But the data is still available.
That's incredible. Dina, you've been a behavioral scientist for many years now. What's your perspective on how attacks have evolved through time?
So I think everything that people have talked about is not new, right? So a lot of the heuristics and biases that marketing leverages have been existing for a century now, decades. So, human nature has capacities just like a system and technology. And what we're doing is we're manipulating those capacities. But I think the evolution is that we aren't fighting back, leveraging those same capacities that humans have. And the human error is my big problem with this environment. I've worked in cybersecurity for almost 15 years now as a social psychologist researching human behavior to make cybersecurity better. And the longer we keep talking about human errors and framing them as human mistakes, the harder it will be to get humans to change their behavior. So, humans function in fight or flight mode as well. And right now, humans are just in flight mode. They don't know what to do. They don't have the self-efficacy is what we call it in psychology, which is the ability to feel like they're empowered to do something about it. Right. They feel like, spear phishing is, and social engineering are out of control. As Jeff mentioned, they can find you and get your information wherever you go and whatever you do. So why should they care? Anything?
But at the same time, as an individual, it's really hard because you don't feel like you have access to that information. Everything that you guys are saying, it's not that easy to have access to that information and how to go against that. So I totally understand, the fact that you would feel helpless.
Right, and so, we have to empower them to be in fight mode, but calling them the human error and framing all the things that humans don't do right instead of leveraging the things that human capacity allows us to do, right? We're social animals and we can analyze information differently. That's why we're not machines. That's why AI can't make all the same decisions humans do. If we leverage those heuristics and even those biases in ways that benefit cybersecurity, we can put people in fight mode versus flight mode. But instead, we focus on these errors. We've gotten people to wear seatbelts. Do you know how long that took? So cybersecurity is also a little impatient. These problems haven't existed that long. It took us a long time to get people in transportation to wear seatbelts. It took us a long time for people to go in before they're so sick that they're going to die of cancer, right, to preventative care. And so human behavior can change, and we can leverage the psychology and the decades and centuries of psychology and social sciences that we know if we choose to do that. The way to do that in this environment is multidisciplinary. And what I see mostly is technologists and cybersecurity professionals doing it alone and reading behavioral science literature instead of integrating behavioral scientists who spent a long time to study humans, as long as you did to study computer science and engineering and understand machines and algorithms. We have been studying humans, and we understand their kind of algorithms inside.
They've actually added behavioral analytics, but it's the behavior of the data and not the humans, so we're still missing the point here.
Exactly. So I think that teaming and putting these people together is going to be the avenue to sort of get ahead and to build things.
Yeah, I think this point is really important. I don't expect my mom to be a fuel injection engine expert to drive her car. She expects to purchase a vehicle and drive it. But for some reason in this area, we expect the end users to be experts at computer defense and picking perfect passwords and memorizing 15 different rules for the IT department, and that's very unrealistic. And I think we need to start taking these cognitive biases and we need to make design decisions that make it easy for the human to do the right thing, not these anti-patterns of false choices and confusing, rules that you're agreeing to before you can even see the data. And so I think making the end user not telling them that they're stupid or they did the wrong thing or boy, if you only knew better, but instead saying, well, why didn't the system warn you? And so imagine this. You know how a lot of web browsers have lists of bad sites, and if you browse to a bad site, sometimes they warn you. But imagine if your mouse had a little vibrator thing in it, and you're browsing, you're moving around, and you move your mouse a little too close to a link, and your mouse vibrates. Whoa, I'm not clicking on that thing. And it's like steering wheels in some cars. The driving system is engineered to make the steering wheel at high speeds feel unsafe. And as a human, you go, oh, this isn't safe, I'll slow down. The car's perfectly safe, but they're giving you feedback so you can make a better decision. We're terrible at providing feedback for people to make decisions, especially in this kind of quote-unquote soft area.
But why is that? Because we were actually having this conversation on another panel yesterday. We were trying to figure out, okay, why is user experience, why is there such a gap between user experience and cybersecurity? What happened? Is it because it's only IT-minded people who created those rules and who created that design? How do you explain it?
So I was going to say that there was, to echo what was just said to some extent, you can't really expect that a really effective social engineer or cyber criminal or whatever won't be able to get a tactic past a particular person. And actually I saw this statistics from a massive amount of phishing simulations. And we worked out that in a phishing simulation wave of about 150,000 people over 10 different waves, 50 of those people had clicked on every single link every single time. Right, and we worked it back, and we thought, I mean, psychologists might know about this, but we thought it was probably a manifestation of obsessive compulsive disorder, that probably there was an instance rate maybe of 1 in 300 people that feel everything that comes through they have to open in there. So I agree, there is...
or maybe they just hate their boss, and they just want to...
It's another option.
The other interesting cultural thing was, again, when people sort of telling us about, what works for them, a lot of people were confessing that if they got something dodgy at home and they didn't know if it was safe or not, they figured the corporate environment's probably safer, so they would send it into the corporate environment and open it there.
Right.
Well, because they've got security, right? So it's probably going to be safer, and this is the human condition, isn't it?
So that's a great example. So when we do studies on social engineering, particularly spear phishing, we find there's the group that always clicks, right? And people say, links are begging to be clicked, and I smile about that. That might be true. And then there's actually the people who never click. And so, we've done research and we've studied the people who always click. And so I propose research to really understand the people who never click, and I never get funded. So
why?
Because they think,
we're looking for
they don't click, so they're not our problem. What they're not understanding is we can understand the mental models of those who don't click and leverage that human capability, right, to train the rest of the folks that are probably in between. There's likely to be a group that will always click no matter how hard you try because they're unwilling or unable to learn, right? So they don't have the cognitive capacity to learn, or they just choose not to, and they will never be convinced that cybersecurity is anybody's problem but security's. But we can learn from potentially a lot from those that never click, and yet nobody wants to fund that kind of research. So I think the longer we treat humans as the weakest link, humans are the missing link, that's what we call it. And I think the more we try to consider that and try to study that and fill that gap with what we know about human behavior, the farther we're going to get ahead in fighting our adversaries. And they spend a lot of time understanding human psychology. And we see that in the military and other work that I do. We see a lot of how much they've learned about humans, and they're probably a good 20 years ahead of the good guys in using psychology to benefit this sort of cybersecurity arena.
Yeah, and I also think there is a commercial model behind it, because we are forgetting also that there are trackers on internet, and there in Europe more than 100 companies who are collecting your data. And without knowing you and without informing you, and the good news is you can switch it off. I don't want to buy the red shoes of my wife because she served on my laptop. So in Europe you have a website. I can share it afterwards, sure. so we can share it here to the community. That's in the European Union. There is a list of all those sites, and you can pull them off. The bad news is you are a little bit more anonymized than on the internet from Europe. So that you don't get the targeted emails or the targeted messages
but
on the screen.
At the same time, when we heard the revelations of Edward Snowden, when we saw what the NSA did with all of our data, it almost feels like whenever we hear, oh, you can switch it off, we're like, no, we can't. I mean, we know that someone else can switch it back on. And it almost feels like every time someone tells me, oh, no, but you can have power over your own data, I'm like, no, I already feel like that time is over.
No, the good thing is we have the GDPR now. That's
right.
That's the good thing. So what happened to me is I have a health insurance. So I went into my private part of the health insurance. So I checked up some invoices and stuff. And then I saw they were tracking me from the inside of the secured part of my health insurer. So have you ever tried to communicate with your health insurer? Try to call them, no contact. Try to mail them, no response. So I thought, you know what? I put it on Twitter. So I said, why does my health insurance put a tracker on my private details and send it to Google? And within 5 minutes, I got a response. They removed it from the site. So there are possibilities.
Okay.
Thanks to social media.
So there's still hope.
Yeah, there's hope.
Okay. So if there are still people in the audience that think that it's only naive people who get caught by social engineering techniques, we're actually going to show you a very strong demonstration of how effective attackers can be when they actually prey on the human tendency towards trust. Let's take a look.
You have stolen about $2,500 worth of hotel points. And worst of all, you have put me in a middle seat.
On a 5-hour flight.
Oh my God. And they just let you do it?
Yeah.
Them. So I am here in Las Vegas for two of the world's biggest hacking conferences. And for some reason, I have agreed to be hacked. I'm meeting Rachel Toback, who specializes in a special form of hacking called social engineering. And I'm very nervous.
I feel like I know pretty much everything about you.
I instantly don't trust you. So am I going to be safer today, thanks to you?
You and every other customer will be safer today, thanks to what you're willing to let me do.
Well, let's get started, I guess.
Okay. So you want to assume that everything that you put on social media is public. Information that can be found in places like this can be used to authenticate you with different companies. Do you remember this tweet?
Yeah.
I used this to gain access to your current address.
What?
So what I did is I called up this furniture company right here, and I basically said, hey, we're gonna buy another one of these pieces of furniture, but I need to make sure that I don't accidentally have the wrong information on the account. And they said, no, I mean, you ordered something a while ago, but the thing that you ordered we shipped to this address. And yeah, I think I got his updated address, which is pretty scary because that happened in 30 seconds. I got your current address. I got your birthday from Twitter. I called like pretty much every business that he ever listed that he used on his Twitter or Instagram. What you have to understand is when you do that, I now know which companies you use, and I know which companies to call as you.
What did you get from the boutique hotel?
Your phone number and your email address.
They gave you my phone number.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be doing these phone calls. I'm going to be actually live hacking. So when I call, your phone number is going to display on their caller ID.
This is Donnie O'Sullivan.
Who are you really?
No, this is Donnie O'Sullivan. I can tell you my address, phone number, date of birth.
Whatever you need to know to verify that that's really me.
That's wild.
I am on the road right now, and I'm having trouble getting access to my internet, but I need to transfer points to my friend for a bridal shower. Hopefully you can help me out over the phone. I have all the information. I have 90,000, is that correct? So the first and last name is Rachel Toback. Oh, they've been transferred? Okay, fantastic.
They're gone.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Are your points gone?
They're gone. That is crazy. When you call this airline, it's going to be coming from my number.
Yes.
As you know, I have a flight leaving Vegas.
I'll put you in the middle. I'm trying to do this like personal essay thing, so can you move me to a middle seat, kind of in the back of the plane? I know you probably don't get that request a lot. Oh, perfect. Okay, so it's a row right before the last row, and it's in the middle seat.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
You're in the back of the plane, middle seat.
I had an exit aisle.
I know. He picked it up saying, Mr. O'Sullivan, how can I help you?
If I was not sitting here with you and didn't know, they said, well, sir, you called up and requested this, I would flip the
Rachel, you are ruthless.
Yeah, I feel bad about the middle seat thing because we actually could not change that. My contract was that I was allowed to do anything that I could. He got his points back. I was able to transfer those. But what you didn't see in that video is that I accidentally canceled his coffee reward points that he'd been saving for over 10 years, and we couldn't get them back. So it's very sad. He did have to fly in the middle seat. He did lose all of his coffee reward points.
So I'm still going to ask this question. So as Jeff was saying earlier, it's not always about you, but sometimes it is about you. So we've seen, of course, okay, airlines, points, but can you tell us, because I still have that problem with people, to try to understand how, how dangerous this can get. Like, what can be some of the consequences of some of your actions when you get that information on Instagram? A home address, you were saying, I have your home address. Most people are going to say, okay, well, you have my home address, and what? What are some, no, but it's crazy, but it's true. Some people are not going to feel threatened that you have the home address. What can happen?
You mentioned that you tweeted at your healthcare provider, right? What's the very first thing that I would do with that information? I would probably contact your healthcare provider and try and gain information about your health status. That's terrifying. That could be used for extortion. I'm not saying you have anything wrong, right?
Okay,
but if you did, that's an example.
But I have you on my list now, so...
I'm on his list now.
I think the consequences are also in stalking and a lot of other ways. So it moves beyond just financial and economic costs. So there are a lot of young people being cyberbullied, using all the same skills that Rachel used in that video. And there's domestic violence and people being stalked, right, where they're trying to get away from abusive people with their families and small children, and no matter where they go, they can get your address, they can send stuff, they can waste time, they can undo things that you're ordering or situations that you're setting up. So the consequences move, beyond, the middle seat situation and the annoyances or even the financial. But what we don't want is zero trust humans. And so I hear a lot of the discussion about trust, and humans trust too much, and as if that's a bad thing. And then there's this zero trust technology, right, which is that you don't trust anything, and that may be a great approach. I'm not an expert in the technology side on whether that's going to be viable or not, especially if it affects the human and adds in more passwords or anything. But what we don't want is zero trust humans. So a zero trust human might make cybersecurity better, but it would ruin all of our interpersonal relationships. So humans are social animals. That's the best part about our brain. That trust that everyone is leveraging for adversarial purposes is also what allows us to build good relationships, to have partnerships, to be married, to work in the same office, to handle the annoyances of everybody's differences as humans. If we took that away and you created this zero trust human, cybersecurity would be fabulous. Human nature and the rest of your lives would be pretty awful.
I'm not sure we want that either. Right.
But we don't want that. People wouldn't know when to not say mean things, like that inside voice that you put on the outside. We keep it on the inside most of the time because of that sort of trusting nature. And so, I want to encourage people that, human trust is one of the challenges and something that is leveraged to do these bad things, but we don't necessarily want it to go away. And again, the more we highlight that, we create flight for the human who doesn't want to help. And you want them to help you. You want them to help do the things they can do and they're willing to do. And right now, they're not even doing that. So we do want to raise the bar for humans to do more to help us fight cybersecurity. However, we want to limit that because they will only do so much anyways. But we're not even doing that. We're not facilitating their ability to feel empowered, to make a change, and put any energy in it. So they're going to put their energy elsewhere until we as a cybersecurity community empower them with the resources, build things that are usable security. The UX presentation was fantastic yesterday. The one thing that I would say is different is UX is spending time on whether it's easy and pretty, but easy isn't usable security. Does it fit cognitively in our task flow, right? My primary task is to do my job, and then you're asking me to do cyber hygiene. Well, that's my secondary, third, fourth, fifth task. And so are we building things that take into account how we function cognitively, not just about ease of use? There's a lot of other capabilities in the human that we can leverage to make that better. And again, that's only going to come with partnering, where the deep technical experts work with the deep human experts, and we figure out how to move the ball.
And is that happening more and more, or do you feel like you're still struggling to create that relationship?
It's getting better, right? So I lead MITRE's human behavior and cybersecurity capability. So I have a team of 8 PhD behavioral scientists focused solely on cybersecurity. And we team with cybersecurity professionals, like most of you in the room, to research human behavior, to understand the things that we can leverage about our human capabilities, to make the humans that missing link. So we need more. So we need more behavioral scientists.
And it makes sense. I mean, we have been saying for the last 15 years, you know, the human is at the heart of all this. The human is at the heart of it. And it's actually the title of this FIC 2020, so it does make sense. Jeff, I think you had something to add.
Well, you asked earlier a little bit about what if they get your home address or whatever. Right. And I'm old enough and been doing this long enough that in the early days, the social engineering was really just digging up dirt on your other hackers. It says hackers attacking hackers because there really wasn't anything else to...
So what about reputation? It was about...
Well, yeah, it was more like if I could figure out where you lived, I controlled you because I knew your real identity.
You're vulnerable, right?
Right, because maybe your parents didn't know what you were doing or whatever. And so as a hacker, you spent a lot of time trying to protect where you slept at night, right? What's your real name and where do you live and what's your phone number? And so a lot of early hacking was to hide these hack phones, to reroute your calls, to hide the source of your phone call, these things. And I just remember there was a feud going on between these two guys, and they're insulting each other, yelling at each other on this conference call bridge, and one guy decided he's going to figure out who the other person is. He's going to do it. And he would sit quietly on these conference calls and listen and take notes of everything that guy said. One time, there was construction noise in the background. Somebody said, hey, can you mute your phone or something? It's really loud. And he's like, oh, man, they're building a new restaurant across the street. Restaurant across the street. Writes that down. 3 months later, he says something else about, oh, no, I'm so close, I just walk across the street to go to my apartment. Lives across the street apartment. Then the guy calls, and he's calling from a payphone at like a restaurant, a Denny's restaurant or something. Somebody calls every Denny's restaurant on the East Coast. Every time this guy's on the phone, he starts calling Denny's restaurants. Hey, is there somebody at your payphone? I'm officer, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for my confidential informant. He's supposed to be calling me from a payphone. Can you just look out your window and tell me if somebody's on the payphone? It took him 3 weeks. Called, I think, like 1,000 of these restaurants. Got the guy. Now he knows what restaurant it is. He knows what's across the street. And then all of that work, almost 3 months of work, and one time they got into an argument on the phone, and he said, listen, Danny, I don't want to have to come down there, and feed you Denny's hamburgers or whatever. That was it. That guy dropped off, never to be heard from again, right? And it's just the lengths people will go to sometimes, because there's an implied threat there.
But why is it then that most people don't think that's possible, that other people would go to that length? I mean, a lot of people don't think that there are people who are social engineers and specialize in that.
I think maybe, unfortunately, men don't think that, but I've known enough women, friends that have had crazy stalkers, that they'll absolutely go to that length to be super creepy. And so I think there's maybe even a disconnect between the two genders on how we perceive this as a threat. Right? To men, it might be, oh, interesting. To women, maybe it's actually threatening.
And something ironic there is when I am attacking different people, usually I first choose to attack men because I am successful 100% of the time over the phone with men. I'm successful about
Why is that?
I think that they find my voice non-threatening, and they think that it's not possible that I would be an attacker in this situation. Now, if I call a woman who is my mother's age, there is no way I am getting through with my attack. She's just tired of it. She's over it. And it's hilarious to me that the folks who think that they're unlikely to be targeted are the folks that I'm most likely able to target as an attacker.
Raf?
Yeah, that feeds in actually. I think you're absolutely correct that hacking has to work by going unnoticed, so therefore it's very much, if you think you're not the kind of person that's going to get hacked, you absolutely are. But I wanted to pick up on your point as well, Deanna, about zero confidence or being, worried about technology. And I think that is a real issue, because what I noticed in the patterns, so I say looking at all these techniques from a cybersecurity perspective, we think in cybersecurity terms of vulnerabilities, so not flaws, but let's say the human brain has certain vulnerabilities because of the way it works, and they can be exploited. And psychology was always, a discipline about how humans understood how our brains operate. But now what it's becoming is how technology can understand how we can be controlled, influenced, both fairly and unfairly. And I think that's the big problem that's building more nervousness about how people use technology. And you see a lot of things now going almost through fashion cycles. So like the word upgrade, we're conditioned to think of the word upgrade as an improvement. I have been given so many things recently which have been pushed towards an upgrade. I'm thinking, well, hang on. It's worse than it was. It's built worse. It's this, it's that. And, all they've done is progress the number. The only thing they've upgraded is maybe the name. And I think we're all becoming a bit jaded, as you say, and losing confidence, because we can tell when we have an interaction with technology now that we are being manipulated more and more, because a single social engineer, you can know a finite number of attacks and hacks, a psychologist as well, or even me, a limited slice of information, but an artificial intelligence or machine learning even can be equipped with pretty much everything we know as a human race. And, whereas the military PSYOPs have quite significant budgets, those budgets are actually smaller than the marketing budgets of the big tech companies.
That says it all. Ton, I want to go back on the video because Rachel was actually hacking flying coupons, not coupons, but points. Is that how you call them? Is that something that happens a lot? What kind of hacks happen with airlines?
It's scary to see her going
Right.
this way. So, but it's the system itself on the back end is totally disconnected. So there's, in this case, you phone, I think, the front desk of an airline, and there's a gap between that one. Those guys have access to some of the systems of the points, but that's it. At our end, we cannot see if the other type of guy is who he says that he is. So if you have a successful attacker like my neighbor, then you're done. Because we cannot give guarantees at this side, because that's the human factor.
Right, but one thing that's being developed right now is the multi-factor authentication. We were talking about it yesterday, so you kind of get this text message on your phone, and you have to give your birthday, and you have all these different information that hackers wouldn't have in the first place.
Yeah, but MFA works only when you have the good equipment. But when you have a copy of the cell phone, good luck. You get your MFA 6-digit number on your crooked cell phone too. So you're already then also, I think.
Yeah, it's frightening, and something that I've been doing since I've started demonstrating how easy it is to take advantage of these customer support professionals is really making sure that companies understand how to protect their clients. It's so essential because it's not on you as a consumer to know I can never tweet out to my healthcare, I can never tweet out to Delta Airlines, right? It's not possible for every human to be perfect, but instead our companies have to work to be safer with their authentication protocols. We basically live in the dark ages of authentication protocols over the phone right now. Think about whenever you're logging into your Gmail, for instance. What do you have to do? You have your username, password, you have two-factor, multi-factor authentication. Maybe you get a push to your text message or Duo, for instance, or you use a YubiKey. What do we do over the phone? When I picked up the phone, when I called up an airline, for example, they said, Donny O'Sullivan, how can I help you? Because I was spoofing his phone number. I didn't have to authenticate with even username, password, or two-factor authentication. And that's a big problem. So we're working with organizations right now to help them understand knowledge-based authentication, things like you're calling from the right phone number. I can do that with 99 cents on an app in 30 seconds. That's not enough. We have to go past things like a birthday, right? Because that's on Facebook or Twitter. We have to send a code over
Rachel,
email.
maybe explain what spoofing is. We saw it in the report, but you were, maybe say it again because not everybody perhaps understood.
Spoofing is whenever you make the caller ID, like I did on that phone call, look like it's calling from a phone number that it's not. And I use software to do that. It's very easy. It takes 30 seconds. It's 99 cents on an app that anyone can download. You can also spoof an email address. So just because it comes from something that looks legitimate, it doesn't mean that it's legitimate. And that's why we need to upgrade. We need to work with folks to understand how can we create strong authentication protocols that use technology and not just the human factor, things like two-factor authentication over phone or email.
Just as a small remark, when I was watching this video, I just thought, you know, having lived in the United States and in France, I thought the customer service in France perhaps is not quite as good as the United States, and they wouldn't go to that length to help you out. And one of the hacks I also saw on the internet was, you know, there was this baby, they used the YouTube, and there was this baby crying in the background, and the girl was was acting like she was in a really tough situation, and that's also why that person gave her the information that she needed. And I just thought, you know what, in France they wouldn't even bother. But one of the things is great customer service coming from the United States is also one of the weaknesses of those people is that because they want to help you so much, they're ready to give you everything.
Exactly. And in social engineering, there's two scenarios that go down for me because I don't use fear-based pretexts. I don't pretend to be some malicious, horrible bad guy that makes you think you're going to lose your job if you don't help me. I'm not going to pretend to be your boss and scream at you to give me something. It just doesn't feel right to me as an attacker. So the way that I do it, no, it sounds crazy. The way that I do it is there's two scenarios. Either I am helping you or you are helping me. And just like you mentioned, Jess, that amazing hacker that you saw in the video with the baby crying, I might play the sound of a plane taking off in the background. And it's like...
With YouTube, right? Just with a video of sound of plane taking off.
And it'd be like... And I'll be like, I'm so sorry, we're actually about to take off. Can you help me with this? I'm really stressed out. And they're like, absolutely, I can help you, right? Because they are helping me. That's why I want people to understand it doesn't always sound suspicious,
right?
Because I'm helping you or you're helping me.
That's jumping on emotions in this case.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And we don't want humans to not help humans, right? So there's a lot of law enforcement and people here, and that's really important to remember, sort of the government focus. What we don't want then is humans not to help humans, because when you help humans, bad things happen. Well, when you help humans, good things happen. People don't get attacked. People don't get assaulted because you bothered to help people. So we have to find out that balance. But the identity proofing is a really interesting one. So, you know, some of our U.S. government sponsors are, you know, trying to be safer for United States citizens, but trying to identify identity proofing or multi-factor that works for an entire country is really difficult. And so you either try to do, you know, deeper knowledge base, right, home loans, and then you get to knowledge that not every person has. Not everybody has a loan, right? Not everyone has a car loan. And so, you know, knowledge base has its limits. So we did a really large survey to try to understand what U.S. citizens would tolerate. So it's not just what they're incapable. So we studied both capability, which is can you do this, and will you do this? Because, you know, those of you that work for government, you have additional limitations because your population is higher. You're not an airline who can tell its employees exactly how you want it done and make that kind of change at that level. When you get to the government level, the ability to make those changes and the number of people it impacts citizen-wise is so much bigger that their hands are more limited. And so one of the answers is studying what humans are capable and willing to do before you do it.
Right.
Instead of rolling it out and then, oh, it's not working, or they're not doing it, or they're circumventing it. But did you study it first? We can help you study and understand human nature before you make changes.
Right.
And I think that leads to better technologies that are more effective.
So I just want to take a second and say that we're actually getting questions on Twitter. Please continue to send in your questions. We're going to be able to take some of them. There was also a drawing earlier from Astor that we could maybe pull up again. I don't know if we have it. But while we wait for the drawing, we have to pursue this debate. It's so fascinating. Oh, well, there we go. Yep. That's about the comment Rachel was making also, and Jeff about men, the difference between men and women. That's something I would have never thought of, but that's definitely, especially nowadays when we talk about all the gender differences, and it's very fascinating. We're going to have to keep on going with this debate. I'm going to switch to the part 2. How can we reinforce the human firewall? That's how the cybersecurity term for this. I know, please, Raif.
Yeah, sure. So again, continuing the cybersecurity analogy, we're all used to indicators of compromise. So as I was going through, I came up with the indicators of human compromise. And so close to the end of this, and this speaks to what Rachel was talking about as well as Diana, there are many, but the 3 easy ones, considering that we're very similar to computers in many ways. You know, we've got sensors. Even our brains work using 20 watts of electricity, apparently. But actually, when we get hacked, often it's because things are very subtle. As I mentioned earlier, it's under the radar. It's designed to be convincing. But there are 3 things you can do. Well, the first thing is that if you're making a decision, and especially if it's unexpected, just pause and think back. How have I suddenly come to this point? And the 3 things from an indicators of human compromise that seem to come up quite often. First and foremost was time pressure. So if there was suddenly, you can't hold on this decision, you have to do this decision or action right now, it's like 99% certain that there's some kind of hack or scam going on. So time pressure is one of them.
Right, but you were just talking about the hotel and the airlines. You know that the next time you're going to go on the internet, it's up. The price is up, right? So that's why we give in to the time pressure. I mean, the time pressure is not always a hack. I mean,
actually, what you've mentioned there, it can also be conditioning, because sometimes now, where you are correct that it used to be the case that was genuine, it would go up. But sometimes now you go and you look around and you find it at a lower price, or you find it still at that price in a day's time or 2 days' time or whatever. And I think that's part of what's changing. But I was just briefly mention 2 other indicators of human compromise. Right. So another one was any extreme emotion. And as Rachel had mentioned, not necessarily that they're trying to trigger fear, but it could be a cry for help. It's just something where suddenly you feel yourself at a really kind of jangly emotional, positive indicator. Or negative. Mm-hmm. Again, that's often an indicator that you're in some kind of scam or hacking scenario. And I'm trying to remember the 3rd one. It'll come back in a second. I'll let somebody else talk.
Okay. Jeff, maybe, or Dina, or anybody, please.
I had basically the same observation. It's always, in my experience, because I've been socially engineered, attacked, and people went after all my family and friends and everything. And you reconstruct what they're doing. It's a time pressure. It's an appeal to authority. Hey, I'm with the phone company. You need to provide this information to me. Or it's an appeal to emotion. Hey, can you help me? And even in some areas, it's an appeal to your cultural norms, right? So in Asia, it's more of a shame-based society. And so if you can help somebody prevent feeling ashamed, you're helping them, right? And so the ploy you would use in that society would be different than maybe an appeal to authority society, right? Where we have certain rules and we do certain things, and you're going to help me comply with the rules.
Like the United States, for instance?
Right, a lot of Western cultures. Yeah. And so on my defenses or for my employees, everything it's just, you just wait a minute, just take a breath. Slow down, think about it. And my other one is ask a question. It's happening at you, it's coming at you like this big stream, they're making you their demands or they're asking you questions. And all you have to do is say like, hey, you know what? I've got to go turn off my food. Can I call you back? What's your number? Hey, you're at the bank. That's great. I'm going to be there tomorrow. And all you do is just a little teeny speed bump. And for me, I do have the speed bumps, and I wait and I see how they respond. And if all of a sudden that throws their whole game off, I know something's wrong.
and I remember the third one, so I'll just cover that briefly. Yeah. It was what I called the moldy bread option. So basically, if you were presented, if the option you reasonably expect to be present is not there, that's always an indicator, or if it's really hard to get to the option that you expect would be the logical choice that most people would make, that's again an indicator. And an example of that, I mean, the other day, a popular search engine, which I won't mention by name, but somebody else might have, said, oh, we've just switched on your location tracking. I'm like, it's not for that to be switched on. So, go to your privacy settings. I went to the privacy settings, and I went to switch it off, but there wasn't an off, there's a pause. And again, you find these things, you just want to reject all cookies. There's no option for that. So if you find you're not presented with the option you expect, again, that's a good indicator of compromise.
Okay. Ton?
Yeah, it's human behavior that's for me, not new, of course, but within the airline business, we transport a lot of passengers, and you see a lot of behavior on airports. You have people with fake passports coming in, and they speed up, and they use the same processes. I have time. I need to catch a plane, and they even try to get social skills to get at a better seat and say, I need to have this because I have a medical condition or so, and I need that. So, and then they explain, and then there's the request for help, and sometimes this helps, but the airport staff is trained better and better to perceive these type of threats, of course, but sometimes, they are successful, and that's thankfully we are a human behavior. We are human in this case.
Still, at least.
Yeah.
We're still human, yeah.
That will never go away. I think there are ways to strengthen the human firewall. I've been using that term a very long time when I started first working with technologists, because I think it resonated with them that we can bring that. I think there are framing effects that we know about human nature, that losses loom larger than gains. And so when you do your training and awareness, I think there are behavioral techniques to make sure that you're getting the most benefit out of that, particularly with spear phishing. The wave of sending out spear phishes and just laughing at all the people that clicked, that was a horrible wave, and all you did was ruin human goodwill. Because what you're not getting is that people need to cognitively encode what I do now to fix it with they need that aha with the oops. So when you just spearfish people in your company and you say, oh, you weren't supposed to click on that, shame on you, the human has not learned what they were supposed to do differently at the same time as the oh no. They need the oh no, and then they need the aha, but they have to cognitively encode at the same time. So giving a delay, it's basic reinforcement. It's the same with children, right? You don't go up to them a month later and said, that thing you did a month ago, shame on you, and punish them, because the punishment doesn't change their behavior because it's too far away from the crime and the behavior you're trying to change. It's the same thing. So when you do training, particularly on spear phishing, testing people and getting them to practice is good human nature. We practice a lot of things. That's how we learn how to do things. But in this case, you also need to give them what they need to do better right at the same time as your test. And that is what I see missing, for example, in the spear phishing trainings that are out there. They're still giving you the oh no's, and then the human just frets, and that's when they flight, because they have nothing to fight with. You haven't empowered them with the knowledge of what they're supposed to do differently the next time. And if you don't do those at the same time, then you're not going to benefit. So your training is essentially useless. And so there are ways, and if we work together, we can leverage what we know about the human capabilities and pair that with what you're trying to accomplish so that you get that empowerment and you get that training and awareness through in a way that's going to be retained and to your benefit, and so that you don't waste time. So there are ways to build up that human firewall, but we have to be just as smart about it as our adversaries are. Our adversaries are not stupid. And I hear the human stupid. Humans aren't stupid either. We're just different. But they're leveraging our human understanding, and we're not fighting back with that same skill set. And we can do that. And so it's still a potential on the table.
Right. Ton, I'll go to you right after Rachel, but just building up on what Justina said, does that mean that fake phishing campaigns in companies, for instance, are not a good idea, or is it just how we do the phishing campaign?
not in a traditional way like blaming and shaming, because that doesn't work. Within SkyTeam, we have phishing campaigns. We are a target. We're responsible for, in an alliance, for 19 different airlines. And yeah, sometimes it's about 4,000 or 5,000 mails a week targeted specifically on person. So not on the company itself, but they know where their positions are. And then you can say, okay, this is a target phishing. And we can do a lot of standard, old-fashioned training stuff. They never learn. So what we do a personal approach. We train the senior leadership in a different approach than the management or the other people, because their behavior is different. They're thinking different. We often think that we are equal in the thinking way, but that's not true. C-level guys have a broad view, but no technical skills. And technical guys are deep technical educated, but don't have the broad skills about thinking their own consequences. So you need to educate them differently. And that's how we try to get this in grip, having this threat in grip.
Rachel?
I absolutely love what you said about we can't say don't do that without giving the other behavior they're supposed to do instead, right? I have a background in neuroscience and behaviorism, so I love what you said there. You can't just say no, you have to say no, but here's what you can do instead. Human beings do not learn when they are under a fear-based situation. Their brain does not think anymore, and instead they're just moving in fight or flight, right? So instead what we can do is have them think like an attacker, actually sit down and think, what type of phishing email would I write for you, right? Let me look at your social media. Let me actually check that out, right? If we were to do that, that would really help me as somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with this. Maybe you didn't go to school for this. Understand the attacker mindset. And if you can get that attacker mindset down and then replace the don't click, don't download, because let's be honest, we have to click links and we have to download things to do our jobs. If we don't download the attachment from HR when we're actually supposed to, and we just say, no, we're never gonna do that again, you're probably going to get fired, right? That's not a possibility for you. So instead, we say, let's think about this for a second. Instead of just clicking or downloading, maybe let's use a second method of communication to confirm first that this person is who they say they are. Or maybe we can even change it at a cultural level, where when HR sends out an email that must be clicked, which happens often, they can send maybe a Slack message to the entire company. Just say, hey, this is legitimate. This is a second method of communication to confirm that that thing that you received is a thing that you actually need. And that's really helpful. And then we replace the behavior with, I'm not just not clicking and not downloading, I'm reporting, or I'm checking, to use a second method of communication. When you give those options, people understand what they need to do, because like you mentioned, people are not stupid. They're not. Right. They're the first line of defense.
Raif, briefly, and after that we're going to be taking some questions from Twitter as well.
Surely, really briefly, some operational experience of where the problems are on the cybersecurity front with this as well. So when it comes to phishing emails and things like that, I actually got banned from designing them for a company that I was working for, because the first one I did was I said, right, we'll take down the company website for the restaurant and email around from a spam email the staff restaurant in a PDF form, which will be an infected PDF. You know, not really, but you know, oh no, that's too sinister. We need to show the metrics are improving all the time. It's like, well, we need to do what the hackers are doing, and I think there is a reluctance sometimes. Cybersecurity departments, understandably, they want to show the risk is decreasing, but the threats are going up. The other one that I got, definitely that was it. I was off the committee after that. They said we can send around an email that looks like it's from a foot fetish site. There'll be nothing untowards in it, but at the bottom it'll say unsubscribe. You know, just have pictures of feet, nothing like, you know. And naturally, if they click on the unsubscribe, we can go like you've been phished. But again, you know, this, in terms of actually how hackers do work and how, you know, they try to find the angle that you won't think about. And I think part of the problem operationally is that sometimes we don't want to, in the cybersecurity function, face up to actually showing the degree of what can happen.
That's right. Attackers aren't fair.
Yeah,
they don't act fairly.
A good point. We're going to be taking a couple of questions from Twitter. We have just a little bit of time for that. Okay, so we have, don't you fear that massive and high-quality spear phishings will be possible in a near future with technologies like AI? You were touching up on it earlier. Does anybody want to answer this? Twitter coming from the audience.
I don't fear the AI overlord yet. I fear Rachel more.
Okay.
Because then the AI would also have to be trained in all the emotional cues and to read an emotional state. And while I know they're doing research is ongoing in that area, but I still think a human is the best attacker against a human. Now, the AI might help gather all the information. It might do all the automation to do the info gathering that Rachel has to do by hand. But at the end of the day, I think it's a human that will be best going up against a human. I think the AI probably would
It's maybe a good assistant.
Well, it's like some of the research in social engineering will tell you these ploys are statistically more likely to work than these other ploys. Against a younger person from an older male, these ploys are more likely to work. It's all studied, and the AI might be able to predict what ploy you'll have. If you only get one chance at a ploy, you probably want to pick the one that's statistically the most likely to happen. And so I think maybe the AI would help whittle that down, but it's still up to a human, I bet, to pull it off.
Okay.
I think that Rachel's style, her interpersonal engagement level, no, AI isn't going to replace that, even with automated phone calls with human-sounding voices. I don't think they'll be able to respond to the human in a way that compels them. However, I do think that AI is going to up the spear phishing game in the sense that it is going to do that homework faster, right? Spear phishing is mass. It isn't the Rachel targeted approach, right? Its goal is to get enough familiarity in a group and send out something, right? It's targeted, but it's not like whaling where it's one individual I'm trying to target. I'm trying to target a group, a company, a whole company, and I want enough understanding. I think their ability to parse familiarity for an entire group and target their emails is going to get easier with AI, and that's going to be interesting.
Rachel, really briefly, because we have a report right afterwards.
Absolutely. I do think that the OSINT, the open source intelligence that we do prior to the attacks, where I'm scanning everything on the internet, I'm looking for their social media, their interests, their likes, their dislikes, to figure out my pretext, who I'm going to pretend to be, that I think will be able to be automatable. And that I'm really interested to see. I want to try it, so talk to me if you're interested in that. But in terms of actually doing the attacks, I think that remains to be seen.
Briefly?
Just briefly, yeah, there is a name for it, laser phishing, L-A-S-E-R, AI developing the responses. And my own opinion, I think we are only probably 2-3 years out before the technologies will be good enough that instead of just sending out millions of spear phishing or whatever, or that they'll be more targeted and be able to use AI.
So we're actually going to take a look now at numbers and how many complaints our law enforcement officers here in France receiving and what kind of tips they have for us. Let's take a look at this video by the French Gendarmerie Nationale.
Le C3N est une unité de police judiciaire. La mission du C3N est le traitement du haut du spectre de la cybercriminalité. Sa mission principale, diligenter des enquêtes judiciaires dans le domaine de la lutte contre la cybercriminalité. Nous avons également une mission d'appui aux unités de terrain, d'appui technique. Et enfin, une mission de recherche et développement, création, amélioration d'outils utiles à nos investigations. En zone gendarmerie nationale, on constate effectivement que l'abus de confiance sur Internet est un phénomène d'ampleur. En 2017, nous étions à environ 45 000 plaintes et en 2019, nous approchons les 60 000 plaintes. Les escrocs, ce sont des gens qui savent s'adapter et qui rendent à chaque fois leur stratagème plus crédible et du coup leur détection de plus en plus difficile. Il n'y a pas à proprement parler de profil type de victime. Tout le monde peut être concerné par ce type d'escroquerie. Pour ce qui est des infractions qui ciblent plus principalement les particuliers, on se rend compte que les personnes âgées sont quand même la catégorie de population la plus touchée. Parce que ces gens-là sont de plus en plus connectés. Il y a bien souvent une grosse préparation en amont qui est faite par l'escroc, qui va cibler sa victime de façon précise, qui va étudier son environnement, aussi bien social que personnel que professionnel, de manière à détecter la faille qu'il va pouvoir utiliser pour manipuler à son insu donc la victime, qui va la mettre forcément dans une situation d'urgence, qui va l'obliger à prendre une décision rapide. La sensibilisation est primordiale et doit être régulière pour rappeler aux gens la nécessité d'être prudent et de ne pas s'engager sur une voie qui pourrait effectivement les rendre victimes d'une escroquerie. Hormis le phénomène du phishing, ce sont les faux investissements, que ce soit les faux ordres de virement ou alors les faux investissements d'une manière générale, à la crypto-monnaie, au diamant, le faux trading. Voilà, ce sont les infractions que l'on rencontre le plus actuellement. On est grosso modo à 750 faits en zone gendarmerie constatés pour l'année 2019. Ne pas hésiter à déposer plainte de façon à ce qu'une suite judiciaire soit possible.
So most of you didn't have the translation, but she pretty much confirmed everything that we've been saying on this panel. So it's true that it happens in the United States, it happens in France, and pretty much internationally. She also added that, so she talked about the time pressure, but she also added that here in France, at least, when it comes to phishing, older people who are now connected to the internet are targeted perhaps a little bit more, or are going to click more than other people. I now want to try to give as many tips as we can to the people who are in the audience, because now that we've unveiled all of your strategies, all the ways in which you can hack us, how can we help people? And I guess one of the questions I have is, from what we understand, all the information that we give out on social media, aren't we responsible for then being attacked? So you kind of touched up on it earlier, saying, well, no, actually you're not, because you shouldn't be in charge of your own security, right? But what can we do, maybe Rachel, what can we do to avoid this with maybe precise examples, maybe make sure what you're posting on social media, think about it twice, I guess. I mean, what's your advice?
Right. One of the first things that people usually ask me when I tell them what I do and how I attack is, do I need to just delete my social media, delete my Twitter, Facebook, Instagram? And the answer is no, you don't need to delete it. In fact, I tweet like every day. Instead, what you have to do is be politely paranoid. That's a phrase that I use that basically means, think about, are you able to be paranoid about that piece of information? For instance, are you putting on Facebook a picture of your child at school with their little hat on and they're all excited about their day, and now I know what school your child goes to? If I were to send you a fear-based email that said something about how you need to click this, there's a new vaccine requirement for coronavirus for your child's school, you probably can't be politely paranoid about that information because you're more likely to trust it and there's more emotion tied to that. When you have those emotional ties to pieces of information, that's the time for you to think, I can't be politely paranoid about this, so I'm not going to talk about this online, and it is not your responsibility to be perfect. Your companies have to work to protect you. Your schools, businesses, service providers, they must work to protect you. So when I call, I pretend to be you. Hopefully they don't give me the information they shouldn't.
Dina.
So it's Deanna.
Deanna, sorry, I've been saying Dina the whole time. Deanna, excuse me.
I think that I completely agree. At a counterpoint, I am exactly that parent, right? I have no social media. You cannot post my children's picture online. You can go Google me now. There's pretty limited, same picture, same bio. But the social feedback I get on that is pretty intense sometimes. So I completely agree with your recommendation, but I would argue that the average person isn't going to tolerate the social repercussions. So I have in-laws that don't tolerate and have been very aggressive about the fact that I don't share pictures of my children frequently enough, and that they can't post pictures of their, and share pictures of their niece and nephew online. And most people are not going to stand up to the level of social pressure that comes from the recommendation you just made. And I do, but most don't. And so I want to strike a balance that we, and this is where the government and the states and all that, I loved hearing that in the other panels, is really important because it's sending a community message, right? Not an individual message, that it's okay not to do those things. So we are social creatures and we want to have social norms. And right now the social norm is oversharing, right? And I agree about scaling it back, but until the community gains on that and we do that as a whole, I think that it probably won't happen. I'm not saying that it shouldn't, I think it's great, but the reality is that when you don't share enough, you get a lot of social pressure and you're out of the norm, and people like to be in the norm. And so we're gonna have to figure out how to do that balance, and your state and international and our messaging needs to be the right information, right? But until that happens, I feel like that individual guidance probably won't be as effective yet.
I love that thought, and that's such an important point to make, is that it's very nuanced, and in my opinion, I would be okay with posting a picture of the child, but not geotagging the school, that example. Or it's okay to post a picture on vacation, but don't geotag the hotel. Don't tell me exactly where you are at that moment, because then I'm just gonna call the hotel, get your information, your address, right? And I love that little nuance of maybe you can post this, but that level of detail isn't as necessary. And I love that you are extra, extra politely paranoid, and that's not possible for everybody.
But those aren't clear rules for people, right? Because then we say, don't put it with a background, and oh, but wait, that photograph has metadata. And then you're asking, as Jeff pointed out, the average consumer who's not, I'm not an expert on cars, neither am I on computers. Apparently, no, I'm not on pictures either. Right. And then we get this aha that, did you know that behind every picture is a whole bunch of information on where that picture was taken? Oh my God, I did not know that.
Right.
But I was doing what Rachel recommended, and yet I still gave away my child's school.
That's what I was saying earlier. It always feels like you will never be able to trust ton.
Yeah, a small tip. Who is going here on holiday and put their name and their address on the tag on the suitcase? Can I see some hands, maybe?
Everyone?
Because what happened is that in airports, there are criminal organizations or even individuals who photograph suitcases on those bands, where they
because that way they know that you're gone from your house,
and
right?
then you know exactly, okay, those guys are on holiday, I have the address, they are not at home.
Wow, I have never thought of that. That is crazy.
Yeah, but that's reality.
Yeah.
And sometimes you even have to belt in a public space, so you can watch your family that you're picking up the suitcase, and those criminals are photographing, and nobody thinking that these are criminals. They're just family photographing someone else.
But where's the airline's message that you don't need that information on the tag? So people don't put that information because they want to. They put that information because they think they have to. And maybe they don't, but if they lose their bag, right, or you lose their bag even for a window of time, they think that's required in order to get it back. If that's not, that message has to come from you as an airline, not from me as a behavioral scientist.
I'm fully agree with that one. But we are also human within the airline, and we are discussing this with our members, but also with the airports where we are on. And what you see happening is, okay, there's a tendency to follow, but you have to work with a lot of cultures. Inside of SkyTeam itself, we have already more than 23 different cultures. And think about the magnitude then on differences in human behavior in these type of topics.
Right.
So Chinese, Asian, other Asian culture then popping in and do everything with the luggage. You don't want to know. And bag tags, bags, you will lose the bags somehow.
Well, I lost my bag. There was no tag, and I never got it back. Yeah, they told me it was because of the tag.
Yeah, but okay, the system itself is pretty well designed, and if you think about 675 million passengers annually floating to the systems, and you have approximately a few thousand suitcases that are lost, and 95% of those suitcases are found within 24 hours,
right,
then you do a good job, I think.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, suitcases it's also human behavior. Yep. Somebody put the bag on the wrong spot.
Right.
I was going to say, I think there are three pillars. I like the one that we've been talking about. I think humans can be educated. We can learn ways to improve our defenses. But away from that, I think there's regulation is one aspect. So I know we have some regulations, but it's interesting for me. I remember meeting somebody who was in the Stasi in East Germany years and years ago. And, You know, the Stasi in East Germany, they had files, thick files on people. They knew everything about it. It was completely abhorrent at the time. You know, all this information they knew about you. But that's less information these days than hundreds of organizations know about most of us. You know, and it's not just a question of GDPR, I think. I think there's a question about, really, should it be legal for, you know, within a country, do you want organizations to be able to get files that thick on all of your citizens? But separately, and coming back to a point you made earlier, I think there's an engineering aspect. So I have seen it in one country, Estonia, where they actually issued government digital email addresses and IDs, and instead of trying to retrofit on hundreds of different email services and all the rest of it, they just, for a cost of, I think, less than €2 per head of the population, they managed to deploy a digital ID. You can't open a bank account, you can't do anything without doing that. Now, if you think of it from a policing perspective, first opportunity I've ever had to speak to a nice number of police, but if you think of it from a policing perspective, like in the UK, the number of cyber crimes and the number of crimes committed online and through technology is now higher than traditional crime. And a good way to tackle that is, rather than expecting to pick up the pieces on that end of it, is to engineer it up front to be able to reduce it.
Right.
When dealing with companies that are worried about company takeover or maybe wire fraud takeover, it's always good to separate duties, I think. So Rachel might be really effective against a mail, but what if it's a two-person has to sign off? One's a man, one's a woman. What if the person you're calling has the authority to do something, but they have to get authorization from another person? So we call this the 4 eyes, the two-person rule, right? Take all of your critical functions and at least break it up amongst 2 people. It's also great because if one person gets sick, there's another person that knows the procedures, and then they can involve someone else. But you're not only reducing single points of failure, you're getting multiple eyes on the same problem. And that is going to be a huge defense, because now you have 2 people that think differently looking at the same problem. They might say, wait a minute, we've never gotten a call like that before. You know, I've been here 20 years. Oh, I've only been here 2 months. I didn't know that. So I always suggest, where you can, from a technology or a process perspective, separate things out that are key functions.
We have just a little bit of time to take other questions from Twitter. Really briefly, Deanna.
Well, I'm happy to take a look at questions. I think one of the other things that we can do as a community is also better metrics for the human piece. So a lot has been mentioned about training over the last, government and broadly about, you know, training people. But when I go ask, how do you know that this new escape room for cyber hygiene, how do you know that it works? I get blank stares from cyber. So, you know, another really important reason to team and be multidisciplinary is we have measures of attitude, intention, and behavior change. And a lot of times we're hoping for the behavior change, but we can measure attitude and intention change along the way. And so before you can overtrain people. People are only going to remember so many training elements and awareness of what you want. So you have to be really smart about it. More is not better. More good quality, the right things that are having impact are, and that is one of the things when you say, what can we do, that I'm not saying, but we can do. And so leverage people who can help you do that so that you pre-measure, test stuff, post-measure, and only keep the trainings that are having an effect. Because otherwise you know, there is a human capacity, memory, and RAM, just like a computer, and training only goes so far for that reason, but we can tackle that. So there are more things we can be doing.
Right. Excuse me, we have a drawing. It all began by a love story with a 27-year-old beautiful pool Estonian girl. A little correction there. Yep. But it's true that Estonia is quite a cybersecurity champion. It's pretty incredible what they've been able to do, and it's a very small country as well. It's actually the size of the city of Lille, where we are now, so maybe it's a little bit easier to roll out government emails. One of the questions I had when it comes to training from a business perspective, I'm trying to think as a company, I mean, attacks evolve so much, right? It feels like training has to be ongoing so much that perhaps some may think that it's not the way to go, because the moment you're going to end your training session, the attack has changed, right? Is that true? Is that?
I can elaborate a little bit on this one. Within our organization, we do training with hackers and in front of our colleagues and preparing them at what could happen in their environment. So real on the spot, and then you have the question part. And what we also do is we invited the same hackers to sit down together with development teams to think about how can I make this system proof as best as possible, because nothing is 100% proof, but to fight the problem of the hackers or
right.
all those things.
And building up on what you just said, Jeff Moss, you're the founder of DEF CON. How have you seen the relationship between hackers and businesses change over time? I mean, it's pretty impressive how now businesses are inviting hackers to come and show them their vulnerabilities.
Yeah, so in the early days, there was no value at risk. Hackers would hack into universities to learn how to compute, but companies had not put anything of value online, so the criminals hadn't arrived yet. And as the years went by and more value was at risk online, the criminals started to realize, hey, it's less likely to get caught if I try to steal something online. And so I think the hackers were kind of put in this interesting position where they were sort of there first, and they understand or have helped build the systems. But a lot of hackers aren't criminals, and they don't know necessarily how the criminals think, and they don't necessarily know the risk trade-offs that a criminal would make, right? I mean, a hacker might try an attack, and if it fails, no big deal. But if a criminal tries an attack and it fails, maybe there's a chance they'll get caught, and that's unacceptable. So the criminal might have their risk needle, calibrated differently. So I think what's changed now is that the hackers themselves are viewed as sort of a resource. We can go and ask them, how might this technology be abused? Help us imagine ways in which the criminals can attack us. Or we've been successfully attacked, but now go in and help us tell us what just happened. Reconstruct it for us. And so I think what happens is that just like you're teaching anti-phishing techniques, you can teach to a certain degree the hacker mentality, the hacker mindset of sort of that curiosity, trying to make the technology do things that it was not intended to do. And it's really just that questioning. I mentioned earlier that one of the things you can do to try to foil an attack is ask some questions. And if their answers don't seem plausible, or if they try to steamroll over you, then that's a warning sign. And so that ability to ask questions, I think, is one of the superpowers of hackers, and companies are starting to realize that that's a resource. And if you talk to your local hacker chapter, they generally just want to make things better, and they want to help improve because they're tired of facing the same problem over and over. And I'll give you an example. Like Rachel's using this caller ID spoofing technology. It's been around for 30 years. 30 years you've been able to do, or longer, what Rachel can do. The industry knows it's a problem. The industry has known about it for 30 years.
And nothing has been done really.
And they have not fixed it. There's an economic incentive for the telco operators to not fix it. Otherwise it would have been fixed. It's an externality. All the crime that gets committed is not crime against the phone company, so they don't care. It's crime against someone else. Somebody else bears the cost, right? It's an externality. So I believe there is room for some legislation. If all of a sudden the phone companies were liable, if all of a sudden the legislation said, you know what, only the phone company can provide a number, you're not allowed to spoof. There's other technologies that are better than caller ID that you cannot spoof. Like when you call a toll-free number, that uses a different system called ANI, automatic number identification. Well, if Annie was used instead of caller ID, we wouldn't have it. That attack would be taken away from Rachel. It'd make her life more difficult, right? So to a certain degree, there's things you can do, everybody in the audience we can do, and there's certain things that we are totally 100% dependent on the phone companies to fix, or Gmail to fix.
Right.
And so I generally am not for regulation, but I'm absolutely for regulation in this area.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We have just maybe 2 minutes to take a last question from our audience. They've been sending questions. What is your opinion on the next generation of social engineering and spoofing based on DNA biometric facial recognition data? That's a fascinating question. It's a whole new chapter, but It is creepy. I mean,
one quick point on that. So there is a rise in criminals using latex masks to rob jewelry stores.
Right.
Because they know they're going to be on camera. You have to get into the store. They're going to get a picture of your face no matter what. So they just try to make their face look like somebody else's face.
Right.
And the ability to produce 3D pictures from a 2D image is getting better and better. So I might not have to scan Rachel's face anymore. Maybe just one picture's enough to print a 3D mask of Rachel. And so I always say that people have always historically misused biometrics. It's identification. It should never, ever be authorization. And so on your iPhone, they use your fingerprint to be your identification and your authorization. And that's where the problem is. It should only identify you. It should never prove your identity.
Rachel or Deanna?
The fear that I have is the more data that we collect on people, the more we have to protect that data, and we know how many breaches occur. And my fear is if we're collecting biometric data every time we get on a plane, sorry, I don't want to single you out. Every time we get on a plane, how are you protecting that data? Is it possible that I can gain access to that data? How might I use that as an attacker? So that's my personal opinion. That's something that I'm concerned about, that it will increase the ability for attackers. They're going to have more information to be able to pull via OSINT, open source intelligence, and use during an attack if we're collecting that data on folks.
It's like that information, the facial recognition databases from airline carriers, it's begging to be abused. Because if you think about it, they now have a database of my face historically over the last 3 years. Well, maybe they take those pictures of my face and they sell it to a medical research company on anti-aging, and they can see how I've aged over the last 2 years. How much money would they pay for that? For women of a certain age, how do they age? What do they, it's like this data is super valuable and it's begging to be used, especially if an airline's trying to save money. They will sell that data. That data will be sold.
Not Sky Team, of course.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Okay. We're going to have to take 2 more minutes because this does beg for a response.
Currently, there are, of course...
Ton, the microphone a little bit closer.
Currently, there are some initiatives to look into this, but it's carefully guided by principles. It's needed because we need to regulate this. And we have in the Netherlands or in Europe, we have the GDPR active. In the US doesn't have any privacy legislation, so you can do everything with the data. That's the thing. So you need to have better legislation also in the US.
So I will agree. I think the risk, it'll just be a new kind of vector and risk. I don't know that it's worse, or it's definitely not better. I think it's a different data set than your PII. So then, your social security number or your, your name and date of birth won't matter as much, but your picture and your fingerprint will. And if you're requiring me to use them for authentic, identification, then it'll get abused, especially if you allow it to be for authentication, right? And for that kind of authority level. So I think it's opening up another vector for social engineering. If it's required, then the social engineering, people will use it and they will find a way to manipulate it. It will take a little longer, so it will slow them down in that avenue, but I don't think it's gonna eliminate that potential risk. And I think the only other thing that hasn't really, everybody's talked about that sense of urgency in humans, and so I think one thing I want to say in closing and making the human the missing link as the behavioral scientist is that urgency feeling is created by our culture right now, and until we slow down the requirement for speed on everything, people are losing that intuition, that urgency, that emotion that comes when you get a phone call that says law enforcement's going to come get you because you didn't pay your taxes. I got that phone call. It was stressful, and I know that it was fake, and still listening to a voice message that tells me the law enforcement's going to come get me because I haven't paid my taxes, that feeling for the elderly, all the pieces that we're putting together, that video is correct, like the elder at greater risk. We need to harness that because that's called our intuition, and it has tremendous value that's being watered down, though, with I have to get through so many phone calls on my customer service channel. So that customer service person is gonna, moving really quick with you, even though you could slow them down and ask them questions. They're moving you to make decisions quicker so that you ignore that instinct, not on purpose. So the bad guys are leveraging, again, something that the good guys have created. And so we are a fast-paced culture, but you need to allow people processing time. And you need to allow yourself and permit yourself and encourage people to hone their instincts. And when something's emotional and gets very upsetting to you and you have to make a decision, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. And you shouldn't do it right away. And you should pause. So pause is the answer for now.
And we're actually going to do concluding comments, right, Rafe?
Yeah, really briefly, my closing comments would be, we're analog people living in a digital world, and we can switch up our senses. You know, it used to be buyer beware, now it's user, use care. It's like you've got to be careful. But ultimately, I think we're going to become more reliant on better regulation and more engineering, and sooner or later, AI is going to be defending us, and we're being reliant on that.
Jeff, for concluding comments?
Just that it may feel like there's nothing you can do and you're helpless, but as we've said, really, there's some very simple tricks you can do. Limit on what you share. If you can, use a different phone number, maybe for your accounts than what you use personally. If you have two numbers, separate them. And then just take a little bit of time, maybe ask a question. I'm always a big fan of calling people back. Because if they have an excuse on why I can't call them back, that's wrong. Every company I've ever dealt with in the world that's legitimate, you can call them back. And then I also have, I have my phone set. In the United States, we have a fraud alert system, so it'll say, you know, this is most likely a scam call. So I use those features on my phone, and I really don't have to deal with a lot of these issues anymore because I've lowered my profile enough that I'm just an edge case now. And one final thing is I do a lot of my important messaging and emailing essentially through other providers, through Twitter direct messages or other encrypted messaging apps. So my reliance on email is very minimal now. I get purchase confirmations from Amazon, and that's about it. Because I've had to migrate away from email because it's so polluted that I've moved onto these other platforms that the criminals, they can't get between me and my friends on the chat app anymore. Just like they can spam my email all day, but since I don't rely on it, I use these other messenger apps.
Right, end-to-end encryption.
Yeah, that I just take myself out of the equation there.
Rachel.
Yeah, I think we talked about a lot of stuff today that can feel really scary. You know, you might be sitting in the audience thinking, yikes, I don't like what I just heard today. And hopefully I can help reassure you is that you can be safe. You can find ways to be safe. You don't have to operate under a sense of fear all the time. It is possible to limit what you share. It's possible to change your privacy settings. You can, make yourself private on Facebook or Twitter, for instance. You can be politely paranoid about the pieces of information that you share. And you can use two methods of communication to confirm people are who they say they are. You can give them a call back. You can shoot them an email on a different thread. You can use Signal, encrypted messaging, for instance. There are things that you can do. This is not just all fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You can protect yourself. You don't have to be just scared. And you can be the first line of defense.
And already doing everything that you just said is plenty compared to what average people know about this topic.
Oh, yeah.
Ton, a concluding comment.
Just a short one. Follow your own intuition. If you think it's wrong, drop the line. Quite simple.
Very simple, very precise. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, for this fascinating debate. I'm actually now going to ask for the Général Vincent to take the lead. Thank you very much.
Bien, mesdames et messieurs, on a dit que dans un espace numérique sans frontières, apparemment, les États avaient perdu leur importance. Même on prédisait le déclin et la mort des États. Eh bien, il n'en est rien parce qu'on voit que les États aujourd'hui reviennent, et reviennent pas seuls, puisqu'ils doivent composer avec les acteurs privés de la sécurité. Ils ne reviennent pas seuls parce que leur mission, c'est de protéger les personnes physiques et morales, les biens matériels et immatériels. Donc nous avons toujours besoin d'État. Et c'est aujourd'hui, pour nous parler de l'État, que le FIC a l'honneur et le plaisir d'accueillir Christophe Castaner, ministre de l'Intérieur. Monsieur le ministre.
trouve déjà que c'est une coordination parfaite. Monsieur le ministre, monsieur le préfet, mesdames et messieurs les parlementaires, mesdames et messieurs les élus, mon général, directeur général de la gendarmerie nationale, monsieur le directeur général du CEIS, mesdames et messieurs, chers amis, en principe avec un protocole posé comme cela, je dois avoir évoqué chacune et chacun d'entre vous. Très souvent, il m'arrive de parler de la sécurité, de la nécessité de construire la sécurité du XXIe siècle. La sécurité du XXIe siècle, c'est celle qui sait s'adapter aux usages des Français et aux nouvelles méthodes des délinquants et de nos adversaires. C'est celle qui est présente dans tous les domaines, et pas seulement les plus conventionnels. C'est celle qui a toujours un coup d'avance sur la criminalité, car elle anticipe ses évolutions, ses tendances, et elle maîtrise du coup chaque espace, chaque matière et chaque technologie. Alors, en prononçant ces mots, je dois réaffirmer tout de suite un constat clair. La sécurité du XXIe siècle passe par le cyber. C'est incontestable, c'est indispensable. Aujourd'hui, notre vie entière est connectée. Depuis notre travail jusqu'à la façon dont on fait nos propres courses, depuis nos conversations jusqu'à nos pratiques sportives ou culturelles. Le numérique est partout. Il change nos vies, nos usages, il nous aide dans nos quotidiens, il est une opportunité formidable, chacun le sait, mais une opportunité dont malheureusement se sont très vite saisis les délinquants. Je pourrais ici me lancer dans un inventaire de toutes les pratiques frauduleuses menées sur Internet, mais je crains que tout un discours n'y suffise pas et que les 3 jours que vous allez consacrer ici à ces réflexions-là n'y suffisent pas eux-mêmes. Piratage, vol de données, arnaque aux crypto-monnaies, usurpation d'identité, rançon logiciel. Les méthodes des cyberdélinquants se multiplient, gagnent en originalité, sont beaucoup mieux. Je la tente quand même, sophistication, voilà, c'est bon. Quoi qu'il en soit, on voit que, notamment compte tenu des enjeux financiers, ils se dotent de moyens exceptionnels et de compétences exceptionnelles. Et au fond, quand on regarde cela, on s'aperçoit qu'il ne couvre qu'une petite partie de l'ensemble, car derrière les fraudes numériques du quotidien se cachent aujourd'hui des réseaux bien étoffés, bien structurés, bien armés. Derrière toute la cyberdélinquance, point rapidement aussi le terrorisme et le crime organisé. Et quelquefois aussi des institutions qui s'organisent sur ces sujets-là. Des institutions qui n'aiment pas forcément notre démocratie et son équilibre. Des institutions qui, de façon malveillante, veulent aussi peser sur des événements majeurs dans nos démocraties comme les élections. Aujourd'hui, nous devons être conscients de la recrudescence du nombre d'escroqueries et du fait que la majorité d'entre elles se font en ligne. Aujourd'hui, nous devons être conscients que nos entreprises, nos transports, nos services publics peuvent être gravement touchés. Je me rappelle cette attaque mi-novembre qui a fortement perturbé le service de réanimation et des urgences du CHU de Rouen. Je me rappelle de l'attaque sur un grand groupe de télévision et de radio nationale menacé de perdre sa capacité d'émettre. Mais je me rappelle aussi dans chacun de mes déplacements la rencontre avec tel ou tel me racontant comment il avait fait lui aussi l'objet d'une attaque en matière de cybersécurité. Alors, de fait, notre cybersécurité n'est rien qui serait lié à un luxe. C'est non seulement une urgence, mais c'est même, je crois, une condition de survie. C'est une nécessité absolue. C'est un enjeu majeur pour la sécurité des Français, pour la sécurité des entreprises, pour la sécurité des institutions. C'est un enjeu de sécurité du quotidien et un enjeu dont nous devons nous emparer pleinement. Depuis de nombreuses années, au sein du ministère de l'Intérieur, police et gendarmerie ont pris les choses en main. Je pense au réseau d'enquêteurs spécialisés de la gendarmerie et de la police nationale, qui représente plus de 9500 enquêteurs formés et dont le nombre va continuer d'augmenter. Je pense aux structures que nous avons mises en place, l'Office central de lutte contre la criminalité liée aux technologies de l'information et de la communication, qui fait ses preuves en matière de prévention, mais aussi en matière d'investigation, qu'elle coordonne pour le ministère de l'Intérieur. Côté gendarmerie, c'est le centre de lutte contre les criminalités numériques, le C3N, et ses 9 antennes qui seront créées en 2020 pour proposer un dispositif territorial robuste et expert pour faire face aux cybermenaces. Mais n'oublions pas les territoires, n'oublions jamais les territoires. Au niveau des régions, ce sont les lions, véritables plateaux techniques d'enquête cybercriminelle qui luttent contre les atteintes les plus graves. Et dans chaque département, des sections opérationnelles de lutte contre les cybermenaces procèdent aux opérations de police technique et scientifique numérique et lutte contre les cybermenaces. Nous sommes et nous devons être prêts à agir partout, prêts à agir tout le temps, et nous sommes résolus à le faire. Nous avons mis en place des outils faciles d'accès, spécialement d'aider la cyberdélinquance du quotidien. La plateforme Perceval, par exemple, qui permet de signaler les usages frauduleux de cartes bleues, est entrée aujourd'hui, je le pense, dans les mœurs. Depuis sa création, ce sont plus de 200 000 signalements qui ont été réalisés. La plateforme Pharos aussi, qui permet de signaler les contenus pédophiles, haineux ou terroristes en ligne. Elle est aujourd'hui le fer de lance de notre lutte pour un Internet plus respectueux et plus sûr. Je pense à la plateforme qui m'a été présentée tout à l'heure de cybermalveillance.gouv.fr, qui permet, à partir des renseignements reçus de la part des victimes, d'engager des enquêtes significatives sur les arnaques aux faux supports techniques ou sur le chantage à la webcam. Mais ce n'est pas tout. Et nous devons encore renforcer cela. Et une nouvelle plateforme qu'on a évoquée tout à l'heure, que nous mettrons en œuvre, je l'espère, très vite, dans quelques semaines, Thésée. Cette plateforme est en cours d'élaboration, en cours de finition dans son élaboration pour lutter contre les escroqueries sur Internet. Et elle permettra notamment de déposer la plainte en ligne. Sur tous ces outils, ce qui compte, c'est à la fois la facilité dans le rapport à la plainte, la facilité dans le rapport à la police et à la gendarmerie pour simplifier la vie de ceux qui en sont victimes, mais c'est aussi une meilleure efficacité dans l'enquête. Nous savons bien que sur une escroquerie à la carte bleue, si quelqu'un va porter plainte à la gendarmerie de Fort-Calquier dans les Alpes-de-Haute-Provence qui m'est cher, l'enquête sera difficile et il n'est pas acquis que le gendarme, malgré toute sa bonne volonté, ait les moyens de mener l'enquête sur la fraude à la carte bleue de celui qui dépose. Mais quand nous arriverons à regrouper le fait que ce n'est pas une fraude, mais que ce sont 1000 fraudes qui viennent au fond du même système de cyberdélinquance, à ce moment-là, nous avons les moyens de mener l'enquête et de faire en sorte qu'il y ait 1000 réponses et donc 1000 personnes qui voient un traitement judiciaire et surtout, ça nous donne les moyens de lutter contre ces systèmes qui s'organisent. Et c'est ce que nous devons développer, c'est ce que nous faisons, parce que la menace cyber évolue, elle est de plus en plus massive. Elle nous oblige du coup à faire évoluer nos méthodes, notre organisation et nos outils. Pharos, cybermalveillance.gouv.fr, Perceval et prochainement Thésée sont les témoins de cette montée en puissance continue. Mais ils doivent être vus aussi comme le bras armé de notre lutte sur ces sujets. Alors je suis fier de constater que notre sécurité intérieure a pris le tournant du cyber et de voir que les premiers résultats sont là. En 2019, le Centre de lutte contre les criminalités numériques est parvenu à saisir 4,6 millions d'euros d'avoirs criminels, mais aussi 182 bitcoins, soit près de 1,4 million d'euros. Autant d'argent pris au porte-monnaie des cyberdélinquants. Des enquêtes, d'autres enquêtes avancent, des suspects sont arrêtés, des failles de sécurité sont résorbées. Nous améliorons aussi notre coopération internationale avec certains pays avec lesquels la coopération n'était pas satisfaisante. Et je profite de chacun de mes déplacements à l'étranger pour poser aussi ce sujet sur la table. Nous devons agir massivement. Je pense à ce jeune hacker français soupçonné d'avoir envoyé plus de 20 millions de messages de chantage à des internautes du monde entier. Le préjudice de fait se compte lui aussi en millions d'euros et nos services de police l'ont arrêté. Je pense aussi, bien sûr, en septembre dernier, au démantèlement d'un des plus gros réseaux d'ordinateurs pirates du monde. C'est le C3N, aidé par Avast et par le FBI, qui a permis d'identifier la faille de sécurité et de restaurer 1,4 million d'ordinateurs. Je vous remercie d'avoir allumé la lumière parce que d'habitude, on fait ça quand il n'y a personne dans la salle. Là, manifestement, comme vous êtes présents, c'est mieux que je vous vois, parce qu'objectivement, je ne voyais pas. Je veux saluer aussi l'engagement des policiers et des gendarmes. Je veux saluer ce travail harmonieux et résolu avec les magistrats, notamment ceux de la section F1 du parquet de Paris qui dispose d'une compétence nationale en matière de cybercriminalité. Mais là encore, en saluant ces progrès, je mesure aussi ce qui nous sépare d'une meilleure capacité à neutraliser toutes ces attaques. Et nous ne pouvons pas nous en arrêter là. Nous devons aller plus loin encore et faire de la France la patrie de la cybersécurité. Vous le savez, pour beaucoup d'entre vous, nous avons lancé avec le secrétaire d'État Laurent Nunez les travaux concernant le livre blanc de la sécurité intérieure. C'est un travail évidemment ambitieux, nécessaire, un diagnostic et la réflexion, puis la construction des moyens de faire face à la sécurité du XXIe siècle. Et donc, nous l'avons engagé pour identifier ces évolutions probables et proposer les solutions pour l'avenir. Et évidemment, dans ce livre blanc, au cœur de notre réflexion, se trouve l'innovation technologique et donc se trouve la cybersécurité. D'ailleurs, un groupe de travail dédié est consacré à ce sujet. Et il a entendu les acteurs, identifier les chantiers. Il poursuit son action avec une consigne simple que je leur ai donnée. C'est voir grand et imaginer les meilleures structures et les meilleurs outils pour nous placer à la pointe de la cybersécurité. Je ne préjugerai pas des conclusions du livre blanc, mais je peux vous dire que toutes les options sont sur la table et que nous y réfléchissons, bien sûr, et que notre objectif est de trouver les moyens d'agir aussi avec une grande coordination interministérielle pour lutter efficacement contre la cybercriminalité. Mais il faut avoir en tête que ce livre blanc, ce ne sont pas que des réflexions internes sur l'organisation du ministère de l'Intérieur et de ses forces de l'ordre cyber, non. Le livre blanc, c'est l'occasion de réfléchir ensemble à la manière dont le numérique, dont les nouvelles technologies peuvent contribuer à renforcer notre sécurité. Je pense à l'intelligence artificielle aussi. Pourquoi pas, je pense, ne pas évoquer la reconnaissance faciale, si et seulement si nous parvenons à trouver un équilibre entre une sécurité renforcée et les libertés rigoureusement protégées. C'est cet équilibre-là qui est absolument indispensable, même s'il m'arrive de m'agacer contre la défiance organisée quand c'est l'État qui serait en possession de certaines données personnelles, alors même que dans les usages de nos concitoyens, le fait de confier la totalité des éléments qui constituent leur vie à des opérateurs privés dont les sièges sont bien loin de là où ils vivent ne pose aucun problème. Il y a effectivement ce paradoxe où ceux qui veillent sur les libertés, les ministères régaliens par exemple dans notre pays, sont suspects de faire quand au fond on s'aperçoit que des vies entières sont totalement transparentes par l'ensemble de ce qui se diffuse sur notamment les réseaux sociaux, mais pas seulement sur les réseaux sociaux. Mais nous, notre responsabilité, notre exigence, c'est de toujours parvenir à trouver cet équilibre entre sécurité renforcée, mais aussi facilité d'usage et les libertés qui doivent toujours être rigoureusement protégées. Ce livre blanc, c'est une ouverture vers l'extérieur, c'est une volonté résolue de travailler en commun avec le secteur privé, avec tous les acteurs de la cybersécurité pour former ce réel et efficace continuum de sécurité. Je sais que quand j'évoque cela, là encore, beaucoup me suspectent de vouloir vendre notre sécurité à des opérateurs privés. Si je le pose ainsi, c'est d'abord par un devoir de modestie, un constat de modestie. Le ministère de l'Intérieur ne peut pas prétendre aujourd'hui répondre seul à la totalité de la problématique de sécurité de nos concitoyens. Et c'est l'ensemble de la chaîne qui doit vivre ensemble dans le continuum de sécurité. D'ailleurs, dans cette chaîne, il y a d'abord les citoyens ou les entreprises elles-mêmes, dans leur capacité à avoir les gestes de vigilance nécessaires. Ensuite, il y a l'État, il y a les collectivités locales et il y a les partenaires, les entreprises privées qui agissent sur ce sujet. Et je suis intimement convaincu, à partir de ce constat modeste, que nous devons faire émerger ce continuum. Je crois qu'il est d'autant plus nécessaire dans le domaine cyber que dans d'autres domaines. Et quand je suis avec vous depuis quelques heures ici au FIC, je peux vous dire que ma conviction est encore renforcée. Et une nouvelle fois, cette année, le FIC tient toutes ses promesses. Il montre toute l'énergie, la motivation et l'imagination de nos start-up, de nos PME, de nos entreprises et de nos grandes entreprises. Soyons fiers, là encore, de voir cette diversité économique et de voir aussi des fleurons nationaux que nous avons. Je sais que pour beaucoup, la mode est à considérer que l'entreprise serait un mal, même pas nécessaire pour certains utopistes, et qu'au fond, les grandes entreprises, ce serait plus mal encore. Non, on a besoin effectivement d'avoir des pépites naissantes, des pépites à accompagner, et le contrat de filière qui a été signé hier par ma collègue de l'économie et que j'ai conforté ce matin par ma signature, porte justement aussi l'appui de ces pépites et la reconnaissance d'un savoir-faire, d'une expérience, d'une capacité, d'une force d'action, notamment à l'international, de quelques grands groupes. N'y voyons pas d'obstacles, n'y voyons pas d'opposition, faisons vivre cet écosystème dans sa globalité et faisons vivre cet écosystème dans le cadre du continuum de sécurité. Moi, ce que je veux, c'est que le ministère de l'Intérieur soit le ministère des innovateurs, que le ministère de l'Intérieur puisse ouvrir aux start-up ses portes et qu'il puisse, le ministère de l'Intérieur, les aider à développer les outils qui feront la cybersécurité de demain. Le campus cyber est une occasion de rendre concret cela. J'ai demandé au service du ministère de l'Intérieur de s'engager pleinement dans cette démarche et d'y installer des équipes. Je veux aussi permettre un lien plus fort, plus puissant, plus étroit entre le ministère de l'Intérieur et les industries de sécurité privée. Et donc, nous devons pour cela être un partenaire exigeant, attentif, prêt aussi à s'engager et à aider la recherche et à aider les entreprises à développer cette recherche. Je veux que nous soyons un partenaire protecteur qui défendra sans cesse la souveraineté numérique de la France et qui sera prêt à faire évoluer son cadre juridique et ses lois pour les adapter aux nouvelles menaces, aux nouveaux usages, comme aux nouvelles technologies. Mais je veux dire que nous serons aussi un partenaire exigeant. Exigeant pour le respect des libertés publiques, évidemment, pour le respect des libertés individuelles. Exigeant aussi parce qu'il en va de la sécurité des Français et donc de la sécurité de la République. Mesdames et messieurs, la cybercriminalité est aujourd'hui un problème, une menace de masse. Une question qui demande une réponse forte, déterminée, coordonnée. La cybercriminalité, cela, je le disais dès le début de mon propos, peut toucher chacun, même les plus avertis. Cela peut détruire des vies, mettre à mal notre économie, peut déstabiliser des institutions. C'est donc un sujet que nous devons prendre très au sérieux, un sujet sur lequel nous devons agir au quotidien. Beaucoup de chantiers, je les ai évoqués dans mon propos et je sais que de nombreux autres vivent ouverts aussi. Beaucoup de chantiers sont en cours pour une meilleure cybersécurité. Et il est essentiel de garder notre objectif. C'est quoi ? C'est faciliter la vie de nos concitoyens, de nos entreprises, tout en les protégeant mieux. C'est faire d'Internet un espace sûr et nous associer toujours avec celles et ceux qui ont des idées innovantes et sont prêts à les mettre au service du bien commun. Ce travail, nous le menons ici, en France. Nous le menons au sein du ministère et en partenariat avec les acteurs privés. Mais je voulais dire, pour conclure mon propos, que si Internet ne connaît pas de frontières, la cybersécurité ne doit pas en connaître non plus. Nous devons trouver les moyens d'agir ensemble avec nos partenaires internationaux, avec Interpol, avec Europol, avec la Commission européenne. Nous avons prouvé cette année, lors du sommet du G7 des ministres de l'Intérieur que j'ai accueilli à Beauvau, que nous étions capables d'agir ensemble dans le domaine de la cybersécurité. Alors, devant vous, devant ce forum international de la cybercriminalité, je voudrais passer un appel au travail collectif, un appel plus encore pour favoriser la coordination, la coopération internationale, car c'est ensemble, seulement ensemble, que nous parviendrons à assurer la cyberprotection de nos concitoyens. Nos adversaires sauront identifier chacune des failles où notre absence de coordination laissera un espace qu'elles pourraient conquérir. Elles le feront de façon systématique. Nous devons faire en sorte qu'il n'y ait aucun espace pour cela. Et nous n'avons pas le droit de manquer à ce devoir. Oui, mesdames et messieurs, ce à quoi je nous invite, c'est de construire, bien sûr, mais c'est de construire ensemble. Je vous remercie.